So we're always hearing about how AI crunches these just massive, massive amounts of data. But how does it actually do that? How does it make sense of everything without getting totally lost? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the coolest and most important tricks in the AI playbook, something called Principal Component Analysis, or PCA for short. Just think about it for a second. Picture this. You've got this super dense chapter in a textbook. Maybe it's 20 pages long, and you have to boil it all down for your notes. What's your game plan? You don't just start randomly crossing out sentences, right? Of course not. You've got a strategy. You know what you do? You instinctively start cutting out the fluff, all the little details that aren't critical. Then you lock onto the big stuff, the most important ideas, the main arguments. The whole point is to make it way shorter, but still have it mean the exact same thing. You're capturing the essence of it. And believe it or not, that is the perfect way to think about what we're talking about today. At its core, principal component analysis is just a fancy mathematical way for an AI to do that exact same thing, to summarize incredibly complex data. It finds the essence.
Okay, so let's really nail down this big idea. What is PCA? Really, when you strip away all the complicated math and jargon.
Look, if there's only one thing you remember from this whole explainer, let it be this. PCA is a way to reduce the number of features, the columns in a spreadsheet, while, and this is the magic part, keeping the most important information. It makes things simpler without making them dumber.
Okay, but why even bother? Why do we need to do this in the first place? Well, that brings us to this huge problem in the AI world that I like to call the too much data problem.
Imagine you're analyzing customer data. Maybe you start with something manageable, like 50 different features. You've got their age, where they live, what they bought, how long they were on your website. That's already a lot to keep track of, but it gets worse.
In the real world, things get way bigger, way faster. A data set could easily have 100 features, and each new feature adds another layer of complexity for a machine learning model to try and understand.
And we're just getting started. Think about something like genetic research or analyzing a high-res photo. You could be dealing with thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of features for just one single data point. Trying to find a pattern in all that? It's like looking for a needle in like a continent of haystacks. It's almost impossible. And having all those features isn't just messy, it causes real, serious problems. Your AI model will slow down to a crawl. It can lead to something called overfitting. That's where the model gets so confused by all the random noise that it misses the actual important signal. And trying to visualize it? Forget about it. How do you draw a chart with 1,000 different axes? You can't. It's impossible.
So if having way too many features is the problem, how does PCA come to the rescue? Let's take a look at how it actually finds those important patterns hiding in all that noise.
Let's use a really simple example. Let's say you're describing a bunch of students, and for each one, you measure their height, their weight, their shoe size, and their arm length. Okay, so you've got 4 separate features.
But you'd probably notice pretty quickly that all these things are kind of related, right? A taller person is probably going to weigh more, have bigger shoes, and longer arms. So instead of using 4 separate measurements, PCA is smart enough to combine them into one new, super useful feature. We could just call it a body size score. And just like that, we've gone from 4 features down to 1, but we haven't really lost the main idea about the student's general size. So how does it actually do that? Well, imagine all your data is just a big cloud of dots on a graph. The first thing PCA does is it looks for the direction where those dots are most spread out. That's called the direction of maximum variance. It draws a line right through that direction. Then it takes every single one of those dots and squishes them down onto that single line. And all the other less important directions, it just gets rid of them.
And that new, super informative line that everything gets squished onto, that is what we call a principal component. It's the new axis, the new feature, that explains the biggest, most important pattern in all of your data. So in our student example, that body size score would be our first principal component.
Now, it's really important to get what PCA is and what it is not. It is a tool for reorganizing and simplifying data. It does not predict things, and it doesn't use any existing labels. That's because it's what we call an unsupervised technique. It just looks at the data itself and finds the patterns hidden inside, without any hints or answers ahead of time.
Okay, so this sounds pretty cool in theory, but where do you actually see this stuff? Let's talk about how PCA shows up in the real world, probably in tech you use every single day.
Here's one last really cool way to think about it. Imagine you take a flashlight and shine it on some complex 3D object, like a chair. The 2D shadow it makes on the wall, well, it doesn't have all the detail of the real chair.
but it captures its main shape perfectly, right? That shadow is like a principal component. PCA is basically casting a simpler shadow of your complex data that still keeps its most important features.
And this idea is absolutely everywhere. It's used for image compression. That's how a huge photo file can be made smaller without looking awful. It's a total game changer in genetic research, helping scientists find patterns across thousands of genes. It's used to group customers for marketing, and, yep, it's even working behind the scenes in the search engines we all use.
So, to wrap up why it's so great, PCA is powerful because it makes these gigantic data sets smaller and easier to work with. That means AI models can be trained way faster. It cuts through the noise by focusing on the strongest signals, it helps us actually see our data by boiling it down to 2 or 3 dimensions, and it helps prevent that nasty overfitting problem we talked about. It's really a workhorse of data science.
All right, we've covered a ton of ground here, so let's bring it all home with one final key takeaway.
If you're talking to a friend and want to sound smart, here's the one-line memory trick. What's PCA? Simple. It's keep the most important directions, remove the rest. That's all it is.
At the end of the day, it's the art of taking something that's incredibly complex and making it simple, without losing what makes it important in the first place.
And that leaves us with a pretty cool final thought. Right now, we're using tools like PCA to find all these hidden signals in the data we have today. But as we get better and better at collecting more and more data, what incredible, totally unimaginable patterns will these same ideas help us find tomorrow? Now that is something to think about.